So a lot of the challenges in the automotive industry for a startup company are not necessarily technical. There is a very large barrier you have to cross to get accepted into the club.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with CTech. We're talking about automotives. Meet Dionis Teshler, CTO and co-founder of GuardKnox Cybertechnologies. Dionis Teshler, Chief Technology Officer of the automotive industry's first Cybertech Tier supplier, GuardKnox, is one of the central figures propelling Israel forward in the sector. In 2016, Dionis merged his aviation technology experience and his lifelong passion for driving fast cars into producing the cyber technology that serves as the foundation for software-defined and service-oriented vehicles. Prior to this, Dionis worked as an algorithms engineer for image processing startup Transchip, which was acquired by Samsung Electronics. Dionis holds an M.Sc in computer science, thesis in computational neuroscience, Cum Laude, and a Global MBA with a focus on global strategy from the Interdisciplinary Center of Herzliya. Dionis Teshler, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Are you calling from the offices of GuardKnox right now?
Yes, I am. Thankfully so. We haven't been hit too hard by COVID in that regard, so happy to be in the office.
And that's amazing. And where is the office located?
We are actually in Ramle, not a startup capital in Israel, but a fun and cool place to be in, surrounded by a lot of cars and trucks, which is what we like, and less traffic, so why not?
I love that. Okay, so I think we're going to have to start on that front. I don't think I've yet to have a startup here that is based out of Ramle. Tell me a little bit about that, about this decision, also in the context of GuardKnox and why Ramle?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, most people from Tel Aviv coming into Ramle think they need a passport. Some of them have lived their entire lives in Israel and not been to Ramle. So it's really funny to hear, although we're a small country. It all started because one of our first investors was actually the owner of Ta'avura Group, Shai Livnat, and he was kind enough to give us some space in the Ta'avura compound, which is located on the border between Ramle and Lod. And that has proven really convenient for us because they have a lot of infrastructure here. They have garages, they have trucks, they have cars, they have people who visit from the OEMs, and it's been great being here. We're actually moving to even a bigger building right down the street, and for the foreseeable future, we plan to stay. Bringing the really startup ecosystem to Ramle.
That's very, very cool. Okay, so now take me back a little bit, higher level. GuardKnox Automotive Cybersecurity, you're working on some extremely cool projects I saw, whether it's with the Iron Domes or with the Air Force in general. Tell me a little bit about GuardKnox and how cybersecurity plays a part in the automotive space from your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we, the founders of GuardKnox, myself and my two co-founders, we are Air Force guys, basically. And we worked really on non-IT systems. So a lot of people coming in from the military are coming in from a very deep IT background, and that's actually not us. We're coming from missiles, airplanes, these type of things. You mentioned Iron Dome. And when we came together and said, what are we good at and what can we do together? We essentially figured that doing things for the IT world is not really our core value or core strength. And we know more about moving things, fast-moving things, real-time systems, and things like that, and what's applicable in the real world. And the idea of cars came along. So I have to say that throughout this entire process, I was the devil's advocate. I was against all the things that we're doing today. So I was the guy saying no to everything we are doing today in GuardKnox, yes. Because I spent 6 years Yeah, it was like I spent 6 years in like proper aviation, working with Lockheed Martin, working with the U.S. Air Force, and okay, so we said at automotive, and I said that's a really tough industry. It's similar to aviation. It takes years to do something. It's really hard. Why should we do that? And then they went, okay, so let's do cybersecurity because we did a lot of it. And I said, but I'm tired of doing cybersecurity. I don't want to do any more cybersecurity. And then there was like, okay, so let's check if there is a market for that in automotive. And it was my task because I was the devil's advocate to check that. So I came back and said, yeah, well, there is a market for that, and we can actually do something because it's similar to the way that we're used to in aviation. And so it began. But I'm happy to say that today we're doing much more than cybersecurity, so that's also great. And second, like the saving grace for me was that I'm a car guy, although I spent lots of years in the Air Force and airplanes are cool, but I think cars are way cooler. So for me, working with the automotive industry and cars was a big plus.
That's really cool. Well, hopefully, one day, not too far in the future, the automotive industry and the air traffic industry are gonna start merging into one. But I think we have a little bit of time for that. But until then, tell me a little bit about as the devil's advocate, what was the process for you like as you're playing that role, but at the same time you realize that there is this threshold that you need to cross in order to convince yourself and the rest that there's actual potential for product market fit here.
So I try to, I try to look at it in an objective way and not get kind of my feelings involved in that sense, because the process that we had in deciding what we're going to do was actually very structured. So it's not like in the movies where we all had this eureka moment that we should make this type of product or another. We actually sat down, made a list of things we think are interesting and we're good at and maybe new and innovative, and we started evaluating them one by one. And we actually came to this idea of really building things for the automotive industry. And we had to do it face value. And I really sat down and started researching what the automotive industry is doing today being 5-6 years ago, and what it seems like they need. And it was interesting to see that they are going through very similar processes as the aviation industry went through like 15 years ago. And since I kind of saw that happening in real time, I said, that's great. So we have the upper hand here because we kind of saw what happened there and we can predict a little bit into the future. And that actually worked out quite well for us because patents we wrote like years ago and already accepted and everything. Now people in the industry are starting to talk about exactly these things. And we were very lucky in that sense on the one hand, but on the other hand, we did, we did look at it in an analytical way. We did the process to figure that out. So that was really cool. And I had to be honest with myself and with my co-founders and not, say, because I don't like it, then we're not going to do it. It's hard.
Right. So take me,
but you have to do it.
Take me now a little bit, higher in the air. What is, the space that you're in? What are the biggest challenges that you've realized that now GuardKnox is coming to solve?
So a lot of the challenges in the automotive industry for a startup company are not necessarily technical. There is a very large barrier you have to cross to get accepted into the club, because you have to realize it's an industry that's been kind of closed off in itself for 50 years. In some cases, there are partnerships there, companies that work together for 100 years. Okay. And you're trying to get into that club as a new actor, and we are actually trying to get into that club and disrupt things that are not kind of in the traditional sense of disruption in the industry, like autonomous driving or things like that, but really disrupt some of the core things in the way that a car operates. And they're like shocked at that. They're like, "Who are you? We have people working more time for our company than you exist." Okay. And that's a huge challenge. That's a huge challenge, and also being small and building that trust. And it was kind of an interesting road. So specifically myself, I can say that I've spent about 3 years in Europe, mainly in Germany. Okay, not in a relocation, but 25 weeks a year, which is almost a relocation, but worse, because you have to constantly travel. It's like half the year you're there. And to go door to door in those OEMs and in those tier ones and talk to everyone who will agree to talk to us and convince them that we know what we're talking about, that we're here to stay, to generate trust, to generate partnerships, and then later on expand it into other territories, which we're doing now and we'll continue doing even further. So that has been, I think, one of the biggest challenges there is, because it's just an industry not built, or that in its mindset doesn't understand how it is to work with a new small startup company.
Right. So take me through that journey. You're a small startup and you're going to these big, incumbents and, these huge companies that have, dozens of years of partnerships with their existing, colleagues in the area. And here along comes a new startup that is trying to, change the paradigm or change the way of thinking in one way or another. How do you even go about building that trust? It's not like you can just, I guess, cold email, 15 people and offer them to schedule a demo, right? It's a little bit more than that. So how does that actually work?
So the way that we chose to do it, and I'm sure that there are other ways, but we try to find a platform which gives us access to a significant portion of our potential customers. And that platform can be an accelerator, a scalerator, whatever rater there is these days. And we were lucky enough to kind of meet both really cool guys from some of the OEMs who were scouting in Israel and were here to help. And on the other hand, Plug and Play, which I'm sure you know, who just started a platform in Germany for the automotive industry and signed in some of the big OEMs like Daimler and Porsche and then others. And they created this platform because these guys, when they went into that accelerator, they kind of committed to having some resources to work with startups. It wasn't easy, but at least it provided a platform to start a discussion. So we utilized our contacts from the scouts that we were in touch with. Back then, there was very few, by the way, and most of them were actually not local, but guys from Germany that were kind of trying to work here. And that was an advantage because they were better connected into their parent organization. And we utilized them to get us accepted into this plug and play program called Startup Autobahn. And from there, we basically now have a platform to talk to some of the people with the OEMs and with the tiers. And then the strategy was basically to try and build initially the largest network possible within those clients, because we're talking about companies that are hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, so you have companies such as VW Group, which is upwards of 600,000 people, Daimler upwards of 300,000 people. It's like huge companies. Bosch is 400,000 people. It's like, and to try and build an initial network to map out even the organization and which departments we should be working with. And once you get that, you need to develop a champion, okay, within that department or departments or somebody that you can convince believes in you and also has the access and the kind of the influence to that other people trust. So you get kind of, trust by transfer, so by proximity to that particular champion. And actually, that is a really cool strategy that was, we didn't invent it. We were part of an accelerator program even before that here in Israel by EcoMotion, which is kind of the parent organization for automotive startups. And it was funded by Fuel Choice in the Prime Minister's office. And back in the day, it was in Tel Aviv University. And there was a guy there who headed it, Ariel Sela, who is now heading an accelerator in Bar Ilan, and he is like an ex-venture guy from the Valley, and he really said, guys, you shouldn't be focusing on technology, you should be focusing on building champions in the organizations that you want to sell to, okay? Forget about the technology for now, build human relationships, build trust with your potential customers, and then invest in the technology. So we really utilize that. A lot of fake it before you make it type of approaches, and have nice PowerPoint slides, but back then nothing behind them except ideas, cool ideas, and convince some people, and then move forward from that. And that Startup Outbound platform basically allowed us to sign a couple of POCs with literally we had nothing. It was nothing. Because it's really difficult to build an automotive product or something that goes into the car. First of all, you need the actual car. You can't just build it in a generic way. So which car are you going to build it for? And that was the first barrier. So now when we signed off those POCs, we actually had that particular car, and we could build a product towards that particular car based on our technology. And that was cool because we were given access to places like Weissach, where Porsche is the main Porsche R&D center. We went into prototype vehicles, instrumented prototype vehicles right in the main Porsche garage there, literally connected the wires from the main wire harness to our unit in the car. Like, it was really cool. And in Daimler and Mercedes. And that was the huge, big jumpstart. Like, we sent most of the company, or a large portion of the company, to be in Germany for a couple of months. I even had the pleasure of going around with a realtor to get apartments, to basically rent apartments for the teams that are coming in the various locations. Wow. I even have funny stories about renting apartments in Germany.
That is so cool, because I think huge. One of the, it's a little bit counterintuitive, because one of the things that you think about, in a small startup, the big strength that you have is moving fast, creating technology that big companies or big incumbents can't, because you're moving so fast. But you're saying, wait, but you have to understand the context of the industry that you're in. It's not like you're selling another SaaS cyber, product that you can just put a schedule or demo on the website and just take off from there. You actually need to build that trust. And I think it's really interesting to hear that, from a small startup's perspective, in your case, it actually was building those champions that what took you forward, building that trust on a personal level, especially in these, companies that have maybe hundreds of thousands of employees. I think that's really, really cool. And I have to hear, one of those funny stories from renting apartments in Germany. I have to.
Okay. So one of the big issues in Germany is that they're really strict on who rents the apartment, and they want to be sure that you'll be able to pay, even if you rent them for only a couple of months, for short-term rental. And that requires like financial statements and things like that. And obviously, for us to provide them, they're literally in Hebrew, and right. Then you need to translate them, and then they don't understand what are these banks. So I hit like I had a little bit of luck. So Porsche, who was one of the partners in Startup Autobahn, one day came along and said, "We're giving you a perk. Like in the Porsche Museum in Zuffenhausen, you can rent a Porsche for a couple of hours to just drive it." Okay, and they offered to all the entrepreneurs in the group to rent a Porsche. Basically to give us a Porsche for 2 hours and for free. Like a perk. But you had like 2,500 euros collateral. And I said, 25,000, I don't care, give me the Porsche, right? And apparently I was like the only one, because all the others were afraid for the 2,500 euros. So they reserved a bunch of cars and nobody came, so they gave it to me for a day, for like a whole day. A brand new spanking red convertible 911 GTS, okay?
Wow.
So when I figured that I'm getting it for a day, I called the realtor and I told her, listen, let's go today in the afternoon to look at apartments. So the realtor comes along and the owner of the house comes out, and I show up in a brand new spanking red convertible Porsche, right? No questions about financials. Everything is cool. Yes, sir. When do you need the apartment and for how long? right? And I used half of that day to go through all the apartments we wanted to go through to get it and to avoid all the contractual crap that people have been, like scaring me for about a month. Like all the guys in Plug and Play living in Germany said it's going to be a process and it's difficult and that. So I basically did it all in half a day just by coming in a Porsche.
I think there's way too many lessons to be learned just from that story. Thank you for sharing it. That is just so cool. There are so many things that I want to talk about, but unfortunately, 20 minutes are almost up, and I have a few fun questions. Are you ready for them?
I'll give it my best shot.
All right. We'll start off easy, and we'll get a little bit more complicated. Favorite subject in school, K to 12?
Actually, it was programming. I really liked programming. I like computers.
When did you start programming?
I didn't start before, so I didn't even have a computer at home too early, and the first one I had, I didn't really like it. So I only liked it later on due to the fact that I started playing computer games, the old floppy, like 5-inch floppy-based computer games. And I only got into programming really at school. I wasn't like a computer nerd before that, and I'm happy I did.
Wonderful. Okay, one of your role models, professionally or personally?
Wow, there are like so many people. I think that we can go a little bit towards the cliche road. People like Bill Gates, who is, of course, somebody you look at and you look at their history and what they did. But I'll try something different here. As I said, I'm a car guy, and I'm a fan of motorsports. And there are a couple of race drivers which I really look at, and I think that they're amazing people.
Wow.
People like Lewis Hamilton, who is the current F1 champion, who literally came from a tough neighborhood in the UK with a really rough background into a sport that it's probably one of the most expensive sports in the world, and became a 7-time world champion in line with Michael Schumacher, but coming from nothing, which is almost unheard of. Or people like Walter Roll, who is a driver that beat Audi in a rally when Audi was considered unbeatable in a car which was considered to be supposed to fall apart after one race. Like, these type of things, like the mindset that these guys have. And for me, doing it kind of on an enthusiast level is absolutely amazing. It's like a race driver mindset is absolutely amazing.
I love that. Okay, and three words that you would use to describe yourself.
Adventurous, risk-taking. Let's say it's one word, and but analytical or calculated.
Okay, adventurous, risk taker, but analytical and calculative. I love that. Dionis, thank you very, very much. Best of luck with the company. Best of luck with everything you're doing. Keep taking those amazing stories. They need to be shared. It's very, very cool. And stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too, Michael. It was a pleasure.